everyone, and thank you for joining us in person, or if you're watching this after the fact, after we've recorded it, thank you. Today I'm joined by Deborah Last from her studio in the gorgeous Cotswolds, in the grounds of Kingham School.
Yeah.
I have been there and it is gorgeous. It's a lovely studio. You're very blessed with a large studio there, aren't you?
Yeah, it's what was traditionally the headmaster's home office, and Pete was like, I don't need another office. They've got a big enough one, it's cool. You can have that. So it's good.
Oh, nice. You might give us a little, I know you've got multiple cameras, so it'd be quite good to give us a little flip around and show us.
I'll just show you, I've just got back from being artist in residence, so it's a little bit chaotic, if I'm honest. Actually, I need to put my glasses on to see which camera I'm showing you. Is this one here? Does that work? So there's the studio space looking out into the garden, which is lovely, a bit wet today, and I've got a lovely sofa, and as you can see, lots of mess of stuff that's just come back. But I was wondering if I could do the other view, but I think actually all it'll do is show you the dog.
Oh,
yeah.
there's your table. We can see
Yeah.
your table now. Perfect.
They're very clever, these. Oh, sorry. The iPhone now connects to your Zoom really brilliantly. It'll do your table view and a room view, a looking at you view, which is really cool. So
that's really interesting, and that's something we'll come on to talk about in a minute, but about teaching and you know, some practical tips and things that you found because you now do teaching. But first of all, can you just give us just a little bit of a background on yourself so we can have some context?
Yeah. So art has been always the thing that I could do. It's sort of my earliest memory. I'm a little bit dyslexic and possibly have ADHD in a sort of mildish way, but sitting still and writing stuff is always challenging, though I do. I did ceramics at uni at BA level because I thought I'd be able to sell pots better than paintings or more easily, but that's not necessarily been true. I did that, and then I got to the end of that and thought, heck, what do I do? And I trained as a teacher. So I worked in schools. The first school I worked in, though, was in India. So I went out to India, worked in a school, an international school in the south of India. And that's where I met Pete. And we came home with 2.5 babies back for him to teach in a school in Hampshire. So we've kind of been in and around education all along. While we were there, I ran a girls' boarding house. And one day when Ali was 12, our oldest son, he said to me, Mum, in 6 years' time, I'm going to leave home. I cried for a week, resigned my job, and set up as an artist. In that kind of, he was the catalyst. I thought, I don't want to have this crazy full-on job. I want to have time for my kids and also my art. And so at 40, I kind of went, right, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to be an artist. So it was quite a key sort of time for me. Pete moved to another job. We lived on a National Trust garden, which is pretty fab, and that sort of informed my work, I guess, and that I was able to really play with the landscape. So I've had a long-standing landscape practice that sits alongside a kind of storytelling practice also. So love using figures, love life drawing, a completely happy place to go doing life drawing, and love teaching it. So those kind of two things are kind of at the moment melding. So I'm giving myself space. I've done the landscape a lot. In 2022, I set myself the challenge to paint en plein air for the entire year, every single day. And I did go out in the rain, in the sun, sun's hard actually because you get burned, but much nicer. Yeah, rain, wind, and I lived in North Devon at the time, so wonderful locations. North Devon coastline is breathtaking. You've got Exmoor and Dartmoor fairly close. And so really, really kind of embedded myself into the landscape. And I've always had that landscape practice. There are lots of people who are, friends of the family and stuff like that, who have landscape paintings of mine that go way back to when I was sort of 17, 18. So that practice has always sat there, and I love connecting to the landscape. I think at the moment, I am really exploring how I bring perhaps my storytelling and my landscape together, which we'll look at in the when we talk about the teaching, because that's kind of helped me, I think, to do that. But I'm playing with surface. So I think you never stop learning. So that's why I really believe in education. I think it sits beautifully beside being an artist. And one of the things that I've loved more than anything has been watching people as adults open up to their creativity and all that that brings them, which is usually really exciting. So that's kind of a synopsis, I guess, of me.
Yeah. Wow. I just wrote down one word, which was India. Do you think you still carry some of that Indian cultural influence with you now into your teaching and your practice?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess I was there for 7 years, and I went out when I was age 25. So I think it's a very key point in your life, isn't it? A very sort of informing time. And I used to always kind of, you come back to England, especially in the winter, and everything is grey, like grey cars inside, grey, everything is painted grey inside. And so it's not grey necessarily outside, but we do like grey. I've just put grey carpet down in my house, so but I think that love of color is definitely still there. I think I always loved color. Then you arrive in India and it's a color explosion. I think that storytelling also became very much part of my practice there, because there are some stories to tell. And I did some big paintings while I was out there that sat around a horrific moment that we had in Delhi. When I was with my parents, we were going around Delhi and we just turned a corner. We came across this little group of people, and they had a child wrapped in a cloth, but the cloth fell and the child had passed away, had died, and they were taking this child to be cremated. And that was the sort of, gosh, the stuff that needs to be told kind of moment for me. So I did a whole load of paintings all around that sort of sat inside my style of being very expressive. So yeah, I think it sets lots of things up for you. I met Pete there as well, and I had two of our children and came home very pregnant with the third one.
So it's
Yeah, very.
kind of in your soul. It's in your
Yeah, and I
soul.
think, if the whole week goes without curry, I'm really quite grumpy. I would eat it for breakfast. I love idlis and dosa for breakfast. I quite often make them. So yeah, I think I learned how to be a wife and mum out there actually in many ways, and it was a very much more relaxed thing than it is perhaps here, and certainly for young people now. It's kind of much too stressful.
That's so
But yeah,
funny. I didn't know about you and the curry thing. I learned something. You and
yeah,
curry
if I
would.
can have curry, I'm happy. Yeah.
So I now I'll keep a note of that in case we have a down day with Debs. But you're not down. You're very an upbeat and positive person. And I know you have a strong faith. You've just been on a retreat, haven't you?
Yeah.
As part of your faith.
Yeah, so I do a big thing I've been doing for years actually. I go to Spring Harvest, a sort of Christian festival always around Easter, and there's about 10,000 people on each site. So the two sites that are used are Butlins, so they're fab. Really great spaces to have. And we had so I've always sort of done it on my own and do stuff for the kids in the morning, and then do a sort of paintings in the evening, which I kind of call visual sermon. So that's where the storytelling comes in, I guess. And I prepare just the same way I perhaps would do if I was speaking.
Mm.
And I think that when we connect to being creative, we're connecting to something much deeper, and we've forgotten that beautiful storytelling creator element of faith. It's become rather about intellect, which of course it must be. We must be intellectual about our faith, we must think about it, and we must reason and question, but also we must imagine, because all things, you can't make anything exciting unless you start with some kind of imagination. So I guess there's that element which I love showing when I do what I do at those weeks. And I've had a really good week with some of this. Now we've got a really big creative team, so I've really pushed for it to be bigger and kind of more interactive. So I do things and then people add to the painting maybe in the evening. So I've got them to do various things. We talked about what
Wow.
do you dress up in to do life. So I painted some large sheets of paper in bright colours, tore the paper up into fragments, and then asked people to come and bring a fragment to join to that dress up image, which was fun.
That's really interesting because Carolyn is on this recording, and she's got a thing around some clothing which might be interesting to discuss later. And also Fran is someone who does love to paint, then rip everything up and then reconstruct. So I think both of those conversations will be interesting a bit later. And Rajinder obviously has an incredibly strong faith, and that's what drives a lot of his artwork. So it's interesting. I always think that the right people arrive on these Zooms. They're there for a reason, and the fundamental underpinning of Vincent's practice is storytelling.
Oh,
And
cool.
he tells stories that are you wait till you see
Looking at that, I think
the
I've seen it, and yeah, really like. I think you might.
yeah. So I think we
Yeah.
have an interesting group that will make an interesting critique at the end, based on all the things that you have explained and described underpin your practice. So thank you. Getting into teaching yourself, you said the conversation with Ali kind of triggered you back into art. What triggered you back into teaching art?
Well, I was teaching it anyway, so I guess even when I was a student, most people, and I did do a little bit of nannying, kind of looking after kids in the summer holidays, but I also, right from when I was on my foundation course, I think, I set up summer art schools, and all my mum's friends used to come. And I mean, I probably charged them tenner for the week, I didn't make a lot of money out of them, but they were great fun. And right there at the beginning was that kind of idea that I love teaching adults, because often they have been told by someone, a parent or a teacher, there's no money in art, or you're not creative, or oh, you can't draw, and they're heartbroken. And so I love undoing that heartbreak. and I love seeing people come alive. I guess I've taught adults on and off throughout my career, and it's not too bold a statement to say I've watched people's lives change. Absolutely and fundamentally. And when I left North Devon, there was a lady there whose life had so utterly changed that, I mean, we sobbed when we said goodbye, because she had come along going, I've always wanted to be an artist, and I've always been told I'm no good and I can't do it. And I just want to play, which is great because that's a good starting point for me. And she now, I mean, she's doing art more than I am. She's doing it every night, every day. They've had to clear out a spare room in their house. Her husband was like, "You've given me so much time to do golf, thanks." She just doesn't mind if he's off doing golf, because she nips up to the studio and she's just, and then what she watches telly, she's got something in her hand, it's just changed her life, and she's doing beautiful stuff. So it's always been there. And I guess for myself, I'm a lifelong learner. So when we moved to North Devon, I was running an art school. We had 120 people through the door every week. A friend and I were running it together. We did half a week teaching and half a week running the art school, and called Buckingham Art School for adults and some kids classes. We didn't teach those though. And I just said, well, if you move me, Pete, I'm going to go back and do an MA. So I did an MA at Plymouth University, which was really interesting to interrogate my practice, to give me the framework, if you like, to frame it, to talk about why I do what I do. I think my practice hasn't much changed. And I did sort of rip it all apart and put it back together again. And funnily enough, it didn't look very dissimilar to what it was before. But that practice of thinking and engaging with art on that kind of level, the sort of the lectures were the most important bit, really, and meeting other artists. And I very deliberately went on a contemporary art MA, contemporary art practice, rather than fine art painting, because I wanted to see how painting can fit into that contemporary art kind of world. And that was helpful, I think.
A lot of people ask me, should I, they've done a BA, they've done painting for a while, or they've done a lot of art courses. And a lot of people ask me, because I did similar to you, I went back and did a master's, not in painting because I don't paint, but in my field. And they say, oh, would that be a good idea? And I think it's so personal to everyone. I think the answer is, don't do it because you think you should.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the absolute wrong reason to do it. Don't do it because someone has told you you should.
Yeah.
Do it because it's part of the journey of refinding or reaffirming yourself.
For sure. And I think there was an element of, oh, I want to do that. I'm doing this fine art thing, and I did ceramics. And I've never regretted that, actually, because I think I have a really good potter's attitude, and I watch the Pottery Throwdown obsessively. I don't want to mess about with mud or make any myself. But the attitude to making that potters have is fabulous, because you can make a whole kiln worth of pots, pop it in the kiln, and boom, it goes, and you lose a lot, or you lose 50%. So you have to have this unprecious feeling towards your work, if you like. So
Yeah.
I've never been precious, and and when you are precious, it's sometimes quite trapping. I will tell you that we had a flood in our garage while we were away, and there's a piece of work in there that I did in 2014, an installation which had 13 large 6x4 canvases with body printing, anatomical drawing, and sound, and they were ruined. And
And
I've been
that
thinking
is
what to do
bizarre,
with
isn't it?
them,
Because we
and
had
they've
that
gone.
conversation, didn't we, when I came up?
I do
What
with
should
them.
you do with this? And I said to you, just dwell on it for a bit. The answer will come. Well, it
It has.
seems like divine intervention.
They've gone. They went in the skip. I didn't throw. There's a skip on school, and I pulled them out, and I said, I can't actually throw them over the edge, Pete. Can you? So Pete had to. He took them up and did it. But it feels really cathartic, and it's like, yes, I should remember. I'm not precious about my work. Remember, I've got the
Yeah.
book. If I don't think I'll ever have to remake it. It just was a.
It was a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I've still got the work from my degree and my dissertation, and I've still obviously got my dissertation from my master's, and there's like 30 years between the two. And sometimes I'm like, right, that does need to be, I'm not that person anymore. But then half of me thinks, no, that's my archive, I need to keep it. So it's a tricky one. It's a real tricky one. But I think going back to that, whole education thing, it is important not to allow it to reinforce negative language that's been given to you. I love your comment about that potter's attitude, because I love pottery as well. And I remember distinctly making a whole series of porcelain pots and giving them over to go in the kiln, and the whole lot broke in the kiln, blew up.
Really tricky. Yeah.
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 And the girl who had fired them was terrified about telling me, and eventually she told me. I said, "What's happened to my?" And I was like, "Oh, that's fine. Well, that gives me a reason to have another go, doesn't it? And do it again." And that was the moment I understood that everything is a journey, and you mustn't get attached to things like that. You have to see that there's a divine hand at play, and learn what you needed to learn from it. And it did flip a switch in my brain for sure, having gone through that experience. So you're very bubbly. Everyone, I'm sure, has picked that up now. And you have a very you have a very positive attitude to life, and you've had vast experience, both professionally and personally. How does that show up in your teaching practice, do you think?
I think it just can't help it, can it? I think what you do a lot of learning, and I think I'm still learning. So I think in my teaching practice, particularly on the Exploring Your Expressive Self course, which we'll talk about, but that it's a real flow between the people on the course and myself. And I think I've learned to get rid of the things that you don't need. And I think I've learned to have an attitude towards creating that is sort of embedded in who I am, rather than being embedded in who people think I ought to be. And I think that's why I wrote the title, Exploring Your Expressive Self. It's really important that people explore who they are. And I've got this little tagline that I'll help you to be your youest you, because I think as artists, we're always trying to do that. There's always that question, what is it that I paint? When I went on the MA, what is it that I paint? It was the question, I guess, that I took to that course. What do I do as an artist? I've done this fairly contemporary thing with sound and painting and all that stuff, but then I always loved painting the landscape, and that's what I ended up showing at the MA show. So I think it's how to ask the right questions and to sit with something, and not to keep. One of the things I think that you learn as you become more mature as an artist is to not jump from this thing and this thing and this thing and that thing. I was looking at something the other day, and they were showing this artist, and I was thinking, it really doesn't look like it's painted by the same person. And that might be your practice, that you paint really, really different things all the time, as long as they kind of sit around a really, really different things all the time and look like a body of work, I guess. But it's that, isn't it? I think I bring lots of material experience because I've played and experimented with materials, but there's always more to learn there, isn't there? And it's that techniques. I love watercolor, and I suspect that that's the thing I do the best, although I tend to kind of relegate it sometimes, but I probably play with watercolor better than any other material. But even though the landscape project was all oil, water-based oil.
Yeah, so I think that's interesting, isn't it? Is as a teacher, it's not coming with a prescription, but allowing the students to kind of drive.
Yeah, I guess it's the right thing would be to say I'm a collaborative leader and
Yeah.
teacher and planner. I'm not dictatorial.
Yeah, you don't come with an agenda, you come with an excitement
I'm with
to
a
help.
program sometimes.
Yeah,
But I've ripped that up a bit, haven't I?
you have ripped up that program. Yeah,
Yeah.
good. So that's interesting. So at this point, it'd be interesting to know if anyone who's listening on screen today, as we're recording, actually has any questions for Deb. So if you do have a question, do pop your hand up or pop it in the chat at the side on the sidebar, and either I can invite you on to ask your question yourself, or I can ask it for you, whichever you would prefer. So if you have any questions, because at the moment she's asking my questions, but I'm intrigued to know whether you have questions. Fran has a question. Go for it, Fran.
Hi, Deborah. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
I didn't think I'd be able to join, but it seems at the moment I'm able to be here. I might have to go in a bit because I'm being a granny as well. I was quite interested in that. Well, I'm interested in several things. I wrote down being creative connects to a deeper, I can't remember, you said faith or something else that interested me. The potter's attitude. We had a potter living next door to us in the woods for over 40 years, and she made of it just ridiculous. She had her own kiln that she fired up, and it was just a nightmare. And I used to think, what do you mean half of it doesn't work? It sticks to the shelves. So I've learned something there. Claire Sutcliffe, she was called. But you also said that you've learned how to let go. And I wondered if that was after the flood in the garage or before, because it struck me that I am starting to do sort of 40 years of decluttering. And if you have space, it's a bit of a bind, really, because it means you can spread and not declutter. Correct, Leslie?
Yes.
And so I'm wondering when, because you did say, you had this awful thing and you had to let go of that, but then you said you feel now you've learned to let go. Was it at that point that
No, I think it's ongoing letting go. I think you keep being reminded. I think it's very easy, isn't it? When you, like you say, I had a studio in Devon, which was fairly big also. We sort of bought the house because in the basement there was a room big enough for me to teach and have my studio in. And you do gather stuff. And I think it's an ongoing journey, that letting go. I think it's like a wave, isn't it? You let go of something and then you gather and then you let go of it again and then you gather. And if you think about waves, they do go and then as they pull back, if you've been in the sea, they pull back all the pebbles, don't they?
yes.
And you do that and then you have to go again to let them go. So I think it's very much that a sort of ongoing process that ebbs and flows like a wave. And moving helps. I've moved quite a lot because of my husband's job, and that helps you to clear out. And actually I went to look for something. Amazingly, there are good things to keep hold of. I kept hold of a little design drawing I did for a sculptural piece that we put on the side of the sports hall of the school in India, and I collaborated with a maker and I did the design. And I kept that little drawing, and they've got their 125th anniversary this last week, and they uncovered from all the ivy and the stuff growing on the wall, the sculpture that's there. It's still there. They've painted and repaired it. And they said, you don't have any drawings, do you? And I was like, funnily enough, yes, I do. But I did a drawer to get it out. And now that drawer went shut. So that drawer needs a big old sort.
Yes.
So there's lots of stuff that needs to go. So I'm glad I kept that to think about, I think that was really lovely. What did you say, Leslie? Something about this is my life's journal, or you,
Yes, so that
oh,
was me thinking about the things that
archive,
I
that's the word.
will keep and the things that I won't. And there
Yeah,
are, like, as I said, the dissertation that I did when I was only in my 20s compared to the dissertation I wrote in my 40s, and I think I wanted to keep both, even though it seems such a different human that made the first one, because they show growth, and they
And your
show.
archive, you use the word archive.
archive.
So
Word.
I am creating an archive, and I'm helping Fran also create an archive of her life. That's an ongoing journey that we're doing together. And I'm gradually revealing stories, and something that I've also experimented with Carolyn as well, about asking questions and revealing information. And whether you decide to do anything with that information or not is your choice, isn't it, as you reveal it? So I think clutter, you can have clutter that holds you back, but then, as you've just said, there is clutter that actually is part of you, that is
Yeah.
who you are. And so you have to be discerning enough to be able to understand the difference between the things that need to go. And sometimes there is a divine hand that comes in and helps you, like you had.
Give you a blood.
And
Although
I
that
think that
happened
seems.
before. Yeah, it happened when we moved we first moved back to in England. We went to a house, and I put all my work from my degree under a bed, and that radiator next to that bed leaked, and I lost a lot of that work. So it's interesting, isn't it? Water's always such a pain, isn't it?
I was just about to say to you, are you a water sign? Is water a thing? Because it seems
Maybe.
to be a
So I
big
walked
thing.
away while the garage leaked. So
Yeah, water seems to be a thing in your life. Again, it's kind of around a faith as well, isn't it? It's like I have very much that I've adopted over as my life has progressed, a very much more kind of a faith around letting things be and not meddling so much with them. And I think that's just a maturity that comes, and being able to walk away and give things space, I think, is also important in life generally. I think COVID taught us that, didn't it?
did you answer all your questions there, Fran? I'm just thinking, you talked about faith at the beginning, didn't you? And I think that deepness and that connection to faith, it is very important. I think it inhabits any good work, actually.
For you.
Then it doesn't have to be. I know my work never kind of overstates that, I guess. I'm possibly the stuff that I do at Spring Harvest is a bit more obviously faith Christian based or whatever, but I tend to want to be painting something where people have a question that they can ask. I think that's deeper work, isn't it? If there's something when you look at work and it isn't obvious, then it's a much more interesting piece of work. And you're allowing people to make their own questions around what is this about, this piece of work, and where's she coming from? And yeah, I think that's the sort of faith and other things. You can talk about deep things within piece of work, but it also be quite joyful.
Yeah,
So
I agree. So it's got layers, and actually,
yes,
as you say, will bring their own to the table. We'll just look at it differently. And
yeah,
actually, if you listen to other people, you think, "Oh my goodness, I never even thought about that." So that's very helpful. The sharing is incredible. Yep. Thanks.
Yeah, that's the benefit of bringing work to the table, which we're going to do at the end, and allowing other people to give their interpretation, because that might or might not reveal something else to you. And I know I do that a lot in my practice, where I get people to create stories and then get them to show them to other people and not say anything, so they can hear the point of view of somebody else, and listen and take what they want from that, because life is a whole series of layers. Yeah, absolutely. So
Vincent looked
anyone
like
else?
his hand, I think possibly, but was that
Reginda, do you have a question?
no? Vincent maybe raised his hand.
Vincent, did you have a question? Yes. Do you want to unmute yourself?
not unmuted, sorry.
You're not unmuted.
Me? Yeah, a couple of questions. I mean, one I relate to very much because I always wanted to do art when I was a youngster, and I used to draw all the time. I was born deaf, severely deaf, so I was very much in the visual world. But you know, I went off to art college and steered into doing design, which I've had a very successful career of. But when I got to my 40s, I got back into the art. I won't go through the whole story, but I did a contemporary fine art course at City Lit with some amazing tutors. And it was a life-changing moment for me because I realised it was a part of me that was missing. But so those are two questions, really. One is obviously, how did everybody around you react? Because I know I had a few people, should you be doing that? It's a quite brave thing to do. But the other thing is, you talk about spirituality. I mean, I was brought up with a very strong faith. I'm not a practicing churchgoer, but I do believe. And I think in many ways, it felt like it was very much an inner part of me that was missing. I was very unhappy until I reconnected with the artwork. And when you're painting or you're drawing, especially with the painting I'm doing now for imagination, there's some of it you're very conscious of what you're doing. Other parts of it do seem to come from the subconscious. It's like you're being steered into doing something. I think they are all connected. So how did you find everybody react? How did you feel when you made that plunge, made that change?
Yeah, I guess it was a really big decision. I'd got to the point, I was the most senior female in the school at the time that I was like, right, I'm chucking this all in. And people had started to say, you need to start applying for deputy headships perhaps, or something like that. You know, you could do this. And I could have done. And I think, like you, I felt something massive was going to be missing if I did that. It doesn't feed my soul. And thank goodness I had the maturity to realize that, I guess. I also had a husband who didn't want to do that. So I guess he was going to help pay for the family to survive. And it's making that, I guess we made the decision that money isn't everything. You obviously need enough to pay the bills and eat food. And especially when you've got children, you can't ask them to starve. And they do need presents and toys and uniform and all that stuff. So we were in a position that he was beginning to look also for doing deputy headships or head of department or whatever. And so he got a head of department job. And that made it easy to move in a sense, because what I was doing naturally was coming to an end anyway. And I think it was massively hard. It took so long, even though I'd said I am going to be an artist, and I had exhibited every year since I was in my 20s, since I exhibited in India, in various locations. And so every year that we were at I was teaching, the head of department was brilliant. He used to give us a sketchbook at the beginning of the year and go, right, we were exhibiting in April the 4th, you know, this is your sketchbook. Make sure you've got work for our teacher exhibition. So he very much encouraged working as an artist. So I think people knew it was coming, and they were possibly more supportive of me than I was, because it took me months to go, hi, like an AA really, hi, I'm Deb's Last and I'm an artist. A little bit around sometimes the anxiety that we have, particularly because of what we perhaps see in the press of saying, hi, I'm Deb's Last and I'm a Christian, because there is an anxiety there that people will then assume things about you. If they think you're an artist, they'll assume you're a bit weird and creative and slightly nuts, and much the same about being a Christian. So I think that there are two lovely parallels that run along with my faith and my art. I think that it's definitely a sort of discipling. It's a journey. It's not you're learning to walk beside your creativity in the same way as, I guess, you're learning to walk alongside your Jesus or whatever in your faith. And those are sort of, yeah, it's discipling. It's a discipline. That's what I want. It's a discipline. And so those disciplines of practicing my faith and practicing my artist life have sat really together, encouraging each other, I guess. But it did take me a long time to go, I am Deb's Last.
Let's take a lot of courage. I mean, you always get people telling you, you should be doing this and doing that. And that's
Absolutely.
the kind of noise you have to shut out. And then
because they want you to sell it. So they want to monetize what you're making.
Yes,
If you
absolutely.
aren't monetizing it, then it's not valuable.
But also, part
what
of your
I'm-
journey, I get the impression that this is how I feel, which is why I appreciate what I'm doing now. I've had a lifetime of deadlines, you know, where you see how, like in the design world, and I now, it's not that I'm totally averse to deadlines, you need them sometimes, but I quite like not having the pressure, because it's
Yes.
like a journey, you're just letting the journey take you where it needs to take you. You're not sort of dictating it, you're not being driven by this target and that target. And I think I've noticed over the last 3 years I've been doing this series of painting, how much I've grown and my artwork's grown. So I can, so what you were saying, it's not all about money. Yes, you've got to have enough to make sure you can pay for things, roof over the head. But I think if your expectations are lower financially, I think you tend to have a more fulfilling creative life. You're not.
I think it's not an expectation that's lower. I think it, when you let go of, am I selling this? Am I making this to sell? It will probably sell for bigger money. Now, let me tell you, let me clarify this.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I once went into the Cork Street galleries behind the RA, yeah, in London, you know, and I was with my friend who I ran the art school with at the time, and she asked the question of the gallerista there, what sells? I'm an artist, tell me what sells. And he said, he looked her in the eye quite crossly and said, if you're asking that question, you'll sell for a year and then you'll peter out. That's not the right question. Don't ask that question. What have you got to say? That's the question.
Yeah.
What is it you are wanting to say in your work? What is it you are wanting to do? And not listening to people that say, oh, you should paint some pictures of the Cotswolds now you're there. They ought to be famous views, you know, you've got to do this. Or, you know, you could paint pictures of the school buildings. No.
I get people, why don't you paint your dog? So I've got people.
Exactly. I have painted the dog, but no.
It's connected with your work, isn't it? I mean, I remember when I was doing my fine art course, one of the tutors there quoted Tracy Emin, and she was so right. If you connect with your work, it shows. Whereas if you're just doing something because you're a commercial artist, you research what sells, and you're only interested in monetizing it, it becomes soulless and lifeless and boring, repetitive work.
Yeah.
It doesn't have anything that someone's soul or their heart or even their intellect will connect to.
It becomes formulaic, doesn't it, often?
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I think this conversation is very interesting because it's what underpinned the very starting of this conversation, which is that you know, you have to avoid that doing it because someone said you should.
Yeah.
And
if you're doing that should and ought, you're killing it. If it makes it dies in you, doesn't it? That should and ought dies. Yeah, sorry, interrupted. But yeah.
We had a Q&A last night, which we do regularly, and someone asked me a question about TikTok, which was quite shocking. I'm not the TikTok generation, and but it was a very easy question to answer in the context of art because it was couched in that should I be, and I always answer those questions with for what purpose.
Yeah.
For what purpose?
Yeah.
Why? What outcome are you seeking? You need clarity first. And I think we're doing these 12 principles during the year, this year, just to unpick the, you know, the kind of like sequence of things that are really fundamental to a successful artist. And we're just mentioning them over and over again in these conversations: the bravery, the commitment, the consistency of just showing up and being there over a long period of time. And this conversation around money also came up last night, and I think it aligns to the conversation around clutter that you were just having with Fran, is that you just have to be mindful of your money and what you're spending it on, and know your worth, and then charge what you feel you're worth. Don't do what someone says you should be doing. Do what you feel you're worth. And once you're in alignment with yourself and you're making the work that you should be making and charging the price that you should be working, everything becomes really easy. It all happens really easily. All the time you are pushing against that, it will feel uncomfortable and horrible. So I think all of these conversations interlace. So really fascinating. Thank you so much for your questions.
Second question. First one was, did you do it? What have you asked both?
It was the bravery and then the faith. So you
Yeah.
have answered both questions, yeah. Carolyn, did you have any specific questions that you wanted to ask?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm very interested in myself. I'm sitting here and I've just written down, and I feel quite emotional about this, but I have just written down, I've got a load of other things that have just come up and that are quite pertinent to me. I have just written down imposter syndrome still comes up. So that's still knocking on my head. And I'm interested in why that keeps coming up. You know, I can write down, I'm just going to shut the door because my husband just walked into the door. Hold on. So what have I written down? I've written down things like storytelling. So storytelling is something that I like to do, and I'm still working through how I do that. Never stop learning. Love of colour. I have a whole box here full of Indian wood blocks, and I like to paint with them. I mean, hundreds of them. And then I wrote down, learnt how to be a wife and a mum, because that's what I was for 25 years. And then I need the framework, practice of thinking. And so there's all this stuff that I'm picking up from this conversation. But what is very interesting is that still knocking on my head is imposter still. And I think this is to do with the question around pricing, why we do it. So this is not a question as much as a response to the conversations that are going on. That make me think and question. Leslie knows that I do this a lot. I introspectively question myself a lot, and then I'll go onto the canvas and I'll get the oil, because I'm an oil painter, and I'll get the oil paint out, and I just love the feel of it. And I have to listen to music loudly because it gets it out of my head, and then I just have to just do stuff on the canvas. And I've discovered that I'm not a great sketchbook person. I start off like that, but a lot of my working out actually takes place on the canvas. I put it on, I take it off, I put it on, I'll try something, that doesn't work, so I'll take it on. So it's not a question so much as a response to the conversations and the other questions that other people are having.
I think what you're saying is that hopefully by being in the environment of other people who are going on this journey, you realize that the way you feel is completely normal. And it is a reaction, societal reaction to how we view creativity and art in the UK as opposed to in other countries, because Debs has had a completely different experience in India compared to our more conventionally contained capitalist societal behaviour in the UK. And I think when you have those thoughts of imposter syndrome, that is that old stuff coming up about should you, especially around now. So people who are listening to this later will not be aware of this, but I'm going to say it now. So last night we had a very rare complete solar eclipse. And the solar eclipse often triggers in people lots of old feelings coming up, and they can become quite overwhelming. It's the shift in the energy, because obviously we're all water and moon energy, aren't we? So a lot of that becomes more intensified over that period. And I think just recognizing it, Carolyn, and just acknowledging it and saying thank you and being grateful. Thank you, I'm grateful for that, but that doesn't serve me now. So I'm going to say thank you and move away from that, because that's not serving me any longer. I'm now listening to other voices like we're doing today, and those voices may serve me better. I think it's as simple as that.
And as well, I think it does come down to the money thing, because our Western capitalistic society says you aren't a thing unless you're paid to do it, whether that's a sex worker, a painter, or a plumber. Okay. So
And did you find that was different in India?
I mean, goodness, when people are struggling to eat and to afford to eat, money is much more urgent.
Mm.
So, we were working and we earned what an Indian teacher would earn at the time, and it was £20 a month. And the lady who came to help me clean my house earned £3 a month. But obviously, you could buy eggs for half a p, you know.
Yeah. It's all
But
relative, isn't it?
it is, yeah. But I think what I have learned, if I turn up and I do yoga in front of a few people and I help them to do yoga, what am I?
A
I'm a
yoga
teacher.
teacher.
Yeah.
Mm.
If I turn up and go into my space and I paint and I do it every day or twice a week, I'm an imposter, is what we tell each other, which is what we tell ourselves. And this is not true. And
No.
if you have a practice of going in and being creative, you are an artist because you are practicing it. And I think that is this strange thing about art, that we think that it's some kind of gift that comes and it's sort of downloaded onto some special people and only a few people get it, and then anyone else is just kind of striving after this thing and they are not really artists. Actually, when you look at people who are successful artists, what are they doing? They're doing it night and day. They maybe have had a natural kind of bending towards that creative stuff. For me, I do it because I can't write down stuff so easily, but I can draw it. I can articulate verbally, but writing it's problematic.
Yeah.
So I learned to draw, and it was the thing I did. My parents hated the fact that I'm a complete lark, used to wake at stupid o'clock in the morning, so they left art materials in my room. So hey presto, every morning I would fall out of bed, and instead of waking them up, well, I would wake them up because I'd be there with the crayon going, make him rain, and they'd be like, be quiet. But I was drawing. So of course, not too surprisingly, I have followed the life of a creative because I have practiced it and I've put my 10,000 hours in. Carolyn, I'm sure that you're putting in hours and hours, and I can see that little painting behind you, and I know that you're an artist. And it's not about selling it. It's about doing it. And I think that's what we need to learn as artists in the West, is that it's the practice of doing art that makes you an artist. Now, Rajinder, is no question that Rajinder is an artist, and he has hundreds of beautiful pieces of work in that room there. He doesn't sell them at all.
He doesn't has no desire to sell them. That's the thing.
But there's no question of his being an artist. There's no question about whether or not that's true.
Mm. Mm. I think that is absolutely, yeah, I think that's really beautifully articulated, actually. It's about the practice, not about the selling. And absolutely, if you turn up and do yoga, you're a yoga teacher. If you turn up and do art, you're an artist. And we have to shake off these parameters that society has put on us. It's our duty for the next generation to role model really well, so that this doesn't get perpetuated, and that we don't allow this to carry on.
And yes, it's not that big thing that we had on the MA, which was like, oh, you should never sell anything you're selling out.
Oh, it's not
because
that.
You should sell it. Absolutely sell it. Don't be precious about it. If someone wants to part with their hard-earned cash for your painting, you let them. Don't stand back from that. But it's not that, but it's that belief that comes from it. Of course, sell it, because you have to pay the bills. You have to, but don't make money the justification of why you practice art.
Well, don't make money the justification of you being an artist. So you can be an artist whether you sell it or not.
Yeah, Vince, the question there. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. Selling it is a different aspect of that role. You can choose to do that or not, and you can price it how you wish to, and you can price it in a way that you feel comfortable with. But it shouldn't be the underpinning of that "I am an artist" question. Sorry, Vincent, you have a question.
Don't forget to
you need to unmute. We've got the
Yes,
unmuting situation.
Relating to what you were saying, I've had people say this, and I've heard them say it to others. You're not a professional artist unless you're at least selling £3,000 worth of artwork. And I always turn and say, well, actually, it's to do with it. Being an artist is a fundamental part of who you are. It's not just the fact you do art, it's who you are, the type of person you are. You have to do it to survive, to live. It feeds you. And this is where I get annoyed. When you say, you're not a professional artist because you not sell. You don't sell enough. Oh, well, I don't want that pressure. If it sells, great, but I'm doing it for me.
You have to be professional. And I think, even though I think there is an element when they have to, are you showing up? That's the thing. I think professional artists show up. They also sell up. If you like, they do put it out there. But it's that little balance, isn't it, between, yes, I want to sell my work because I want to share it with other people. I think I've got something to say, and I think other people need to hear it. It's a bit of that, isn't there? But not in a, yeah, it's a balance, isn't it? Because being professional means you do spend a lot of time on social media and on your website, but being professional means you put that into it. And she says, talking to herself quite loudly, you make sure it doesn't dominate your entire day. And that this is when I do my social media, and I'm only, yesterday I spent forever making a video to go on my social media to promote my class in Chipping Norton, and then the Exploring Your Expressive Self. It took absolutely forever. It took ages to download it onto YouTube. And but I've begun to do it. It's going out there. So you do have to spend time doing that. Obviously, my class is not the artwork necessarily in that, but so professional means I have good working hours, actually, because I am saying I do this. I do have good studio hours. So I come into the studio about 9 o'clock, and I always take a morning coffee break. I always take a lunch break. I'm a really kind employer of myself, and I always have afternoon tea. I make afternoon tea really special. I have proper leaf tea, and I sit in a different room when I take those breaks. And then I might work till 6 o'clock. Now, that isn't every day, because sometimes I'm out teaching or I'm doing tutoring, but I think about myself being in a working environment and working for myself. So I am professional in that sense. I am practicing as a professional. Does that make sense? And
it totally makes sense.
I'll be like, well, do you know what? I really want to work on this tonight. Pete's watching the footy on the. I don't want to watch the footy, and I'm going to work on a painting. So I will work in the evenings sometimes, but most often I want to be with Pete, or I want to do something else, or
Yeah, it's an attitude.
Yes,
it's an attitude, isn't it? Like you said,
I've got a garden. My hobby is gardening. Art is my hobby. When people say, well, it must be lovely to do your hobby as your job, it's like, no, this is my job. My hobby is gardening.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, again, other people trying to fit us into boxes that make them feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So I think it would be good to take a little break now, and then when we come back, we'll do the demonstration bit for half an hour, and then we'll do the critique bit for half an hour. So it's been really, really powerful, and thank you all for sharing. I'm going to put the video on pause for those of you who are watching this after, so you don't have to watch us all go off for tea. And then we will I will unpause, and we'll come back and we'll do the demonstration bit. So if everyone has like a 10-minute break now, and you can go and get yourself a drink, and then we'll come back and restart, and I'm going to pause the recording. Okay, so we're all back from our coffee break, and now I'm going to hand over to Debs, who's going to run a little bit of how she would run her course online, aren't you? So how you would work with people online, and we're going to work along. I've got paper.
Cool, excellent.
Probably not going to show you what I do, but I've got paper.
It's not about that anyway.
Good.
I've been listening. So what I want us to look at is that, when you come into the studio, sometimes you're buzzing and you're ready to go and you can't wait to get to your paper, and other times you're completely not. And I have that as much as anyone else. So I have sort of developed these kind of techniques, these sort of blank paper destruction, I think I call them techniques. And I'm a great believer in drawing. I think drawing is really important, and I'm just going to show you some stuff so you can see what I would do or have done on the course. Just going to change cameras. So this is a blank piece of paper here, but obviously I completely believe in drawing. So you've got some examples here. So some of the stuff that we've done over the last term with the Exploring Your Expressive Self is to look at that whole idea of, you know, negative space. And this is completely art school kind of thing that we might do one of those depending on who you've got in the course. But more often than not, my drawings are going to look like this. So this is a bit of paper that's been, if you turn it over, completely screwed up, just sort of, and then reassembled. There's some collage going on in there. And, you know, kind of drawing, but drawing sort of a bit disruptedly, I suspect, is a good way of describing them. And thinking about when we were looking at this, screwing up the paper, you know, you might do landscape. Here are the sheep. They've now just had lambs, actually, but these are the sheep out the back of our house. Black sheep, they're wonderful. They've had three little black lambs, which are skipping about. So this kind of idea of drawing, but drawing in a way that's a little bit disruptive and kind of, this is obviously torn paper, and you can see on the back, nice and screwed up. So we're going to head in that direction. Now, when we were looking at the piece that we were looking at kind of producing triptych. And I want to just show you these to go, here's a really easy way to produce a triptych. This was a piece of paper that I tore up into 3 pieces. And I've torn it across here as well. You can see that I could peel that if I wanted to. Let me get a hand out of the way. But it was kind of a torn piece that then got reassembled into a triptych. Now, I haven't quite worked out how to display that, but this is the thing that's kicked off my kind of thinking around what is my surface and how do I get away from the rectangle, because everything we produce tends to be on a rectangle. Playing with color, okay? So that kind of, these are the sorts of things that you might do as, we might do as sort of quick things that we're doing within the class, or I might demo making some of these. So these are pretty much the things that I've been demoing in the class. And the storytelling stuff, again, has been around. So we've had the word impossible as the title that we looked at for last term. Let me just pull these off. And we looked also at fear. What is it that frightens you? And I'm a little bit afraid of the dark. So these storytelling pieces here, this was about kind of how do I solve that? How do I get out into the dark? And the way I go is, I go with the dog. Here he is. Pull that out of the way. I go into the garden with the dog, and then I'm not afraid. Okay. So we kind of played with that storytelling of night garden. The landscape at night is really interesting. That's on a rectangle. That one obviously isn't. And how to kind of play with that space. And these are pictures that have been kind of torn up. So that one's a bit safe and played with. So what we're going to do today is just to have a look at how do you get to this point. It is nice watercolor paper, and annoyingly, I've picked up a bit of cartridge, but anyway. And you can see what I also was doing was not just working on one piece. So these 3 pieces were all worked up together. The slightly safe tight one that you have to do first, you know, to get it out of your system. And so I tore that up and then I reassembled them into nearly a rectangle. What? That was the safe one. And I did them all at sort of the same time. So I ripped them up and put them back together, you know, and then I did the next one. So each little stage was added in, you know, kind of tear it. I think actually that was the next one after that. And there's still some more dark that could go in there, obviously played with. So we're going to kind of think about, so how do you get over one, this blank space, might just take this one, and how do you kind of make a start? So there are all kinds of things that you can do. And this is one of the things that I absolutely love doing. Now, you might do this with a bit of charcoal dust. I save it on my easel. Or if I'm doing charcoal, I've got here a little bit of graphite powder. So you might take a piece of charcoal and just crumble it in your fingers. In fact, it would probably have been nicer. I'm kind of regretting that I didn't do that. I've got a bit of charcoal in there. And I have this box of all sorts of things. So this is my box of kind of stuff. Is there a bit of charcoal in there? Nah. So we'll go with the graphite powder, and you could just crumble it up in your fingers. And I'm just going to push that down. So I want a crumbly pile of charcoal or a puff of, I don't know, what do you call it? It's like a of something. I can see you all running off to get. Now, this is the bit that's really important. When we're kids, we use our hands all the time, and we worry about getting grubby. We suddenly start to worry about being dirty, and what these little tasks are all around being playful. So I'm going to take my little pile of dust, and I'm not looking at the paper. Okay, so I can't now press the camera to show you that I'm looking up, but you have to just trust me. I'm looking up at the ceiling, and I'm just going to think about how does that, I can feel where the graphite is. Well, shut your eyes. What does it feel like? And where am I moving it? I'm just moving it about. You notice I took my ring off. And it would possibly be a bit nicer if it was charcoal, because you can pick up lumps of the charcoal and sort of draw a line. Just move it about the paper. And let that be a really just, oh, beautiful. Maybe breathe out all the tension you've had around thinking about your art and whether you're an artist or not. It can just be a playful 5-year-old right now. Okay. And and I'm opening my eyes now to have a look. It's gone quite grey. Okay. And my hands are not grey. But that just feels lovely. And now I'm going to take the paper and I'm going to we've got really worried about white paper, and there's something lovely about doing that. Okay, so I've just screwed up that. And I'm going to unfold it and really re-scrunch, because I need to stand up. I put a little bit more pressure and it makes my table and my tea wobble. And just kind of, I want you to you could maybe scrunch that up and think, I'm scrunching up that person that said I wasn't ever creative. I'm getting rid of that, not that person, but that thought. I'm not a creative, get lost. I'm screwing up a piece of paper. I'm not an artist. Look at me, I'm practicing. Yes, I am. Okay, and we're going to open it back up again. And it will have transferred some of the graphite in sort of various places now. That's beginning to look really nice. I really like that as a surface. I do tend to, I'm just moving to get them, have baby wipes fairly handy. It's running around the studio. And it doesn't really matter what material you use. It might be that you're going, oh, I haven't really got the material I want. I've got something else. I've got a bit of orange pastel or a bit of blue pastel. Do it with that. Do it with the thing that feels, that's to hand. Because this is your project, not mine. I don't want you to look the same as me. And I'm going to take this piece of paper. I just want to look at it for a minute and think about, I'm going to tear it maybe down the middle, but paper just tears how it will. So tear it into 4 pieces. They don't have to be even. In fact, it's probably nice if they're not, or nicer if they're not. So I've now got these 4 pieces. Now, if you're anything like me, I really don't like the, when I'm doing this, I don't like the cut edge. So I'm just going to spend a little moment removing that machine cut edge. That's why, if you've got a bit of beautiful deckled edge cotton rag paper, then you know. And actually, this is a lovely thing to do to a really expensive piece of paper, because, oh my gosh, does that make you feel free about worrying about paper? Because you've just torn up, a piece of paper that's cost you £5. You can't be uptight about that anymore, can you? I'm just taking the sharp edge off, and I'm not, not worrying about how that's working too much. We've got a cut edge on there, yeah, just there. That was a much bigger piece than I intended, but there we are. So now all the edges are kind of lovely torn edges, and I've got them upside down. That's it. So obviously you've got a whiter edge, and you can see how white it is when I turn that over the other edge. And I want to think about how they're going to reassemble. And you can see on my first one that I did of these, I immediately reassembled them back into a fairly standard square. In fact, that's not the one, is it? It's hiding. There it is. I assembled it straight back into a rectangle. That's okay. And it's got quite a sharp edge on there as well. But they all lined up, all my machine cut edges. What was I thinking? So I'm going to try and think about not having too sharp a rectangle. And what I'm looking for as well is I don't know if I can bring that close, but some of the torn edges are really nice where the white has appeared and then there's the graphite right next to it. I'm just going to make that even more with my thumbs. The thumbs and fingers I've got. So I'm going to make this perhaps into a nice long piece, which is very much not a rectangle. And they need to be reassembled, they need to be glued. Now I use PVA glue. I'll just show you. This is, and I use this clear one. I think it's one of the few things that I do buy from the works, try not to buy too much from there. And I'm just gonna put some glue on there. Oh, I think it's got stuck. Just need to remake the whole. Give it another time. And you know, you can get all worried as well about, oh, is it going to squidge out? And, you know, try and do it carefully. But, you know, there's an element of don't be too uptight about it. I need to find my paintbrush. I've gone on the table. I do need to move that. I've got my little bit of baby wax. I don't want to stick it to the table. Not. And because they are, because I've got clean brushes on clean, introducing some color. Now these will be, you know, will not sort of necessarily stick very well. I've got an old set of weights that when it's all kind of done and assembled, I will put them, you can use paper weights. I'm just going to put that there for the minute while I'm faffing about. I obviously can't paint on them with the weights there, but it's just holding it for me for the minute while it kind of begins to connect. I've got, you know, like in my studio, I've got some lovely paperweights that my father-in-law had. And when we cleared their house, they were all there and everyone was like, does anyone want these paperweights? I was like, oh, yes, please. And I've used them loads. But, these are just like standard weights from scales. I guess I could have given you a list of materials to, and when we're doing the exploring your expressive self, there's usually a, this is what you'll need this week kind of suggestion, although I kind of want you to use your own materials. So now I have these, they've just sort of, they'll come back again, but just putting, so I won't, they're in the way obviously, but I might put them back on again when I'm done. So I'm looking at this piece of paper and I've got a nice shape. Now I want us to stay with this project. It's quite nice to stay fairly intuitive and to not sort of dictate this is going to be about anything. So I'm pulling out, I don't know if you can see this, I've got this lovely, can you see that? Yeah, look, there's my paints. Got my little box, but I've got my paints in this wonderful, I think it's sold as a sort of display unit for nail varnish or something like that. It's just a triangular, I don't know if you can see that, but it's got all my watercolors because I kept sort of rummaging around in the box and never being able to find them. So now I've got them like this. And so I'm just going to pick up a bit of watercolor. Now, one of my favorite colors, one of the things we've talked about a lot is what's your color? What is your color palette? I'm just going to squidge a bit of indigo on there. I do like a bit of indigo. I've just literally, I haven't got a palette. I've just put it straight onto the paper. So we're sort of being quite naughty. I've got this lovely brush that I picked up. I went to South Korea in October, which was really nice. I'm going to make a well of colour in that one place. I haven't really thought about why it's there. I'm going to let it flick about. And then I'm going to just get my... And so this is a kind of way of accessing painting that where it sort of does it for you itself, but it kind of, you're just being really playful. There's an element of, you know, I'm doing this because I really like paper. Oh, I'm just going to let that. These brushes are great, actually. This is a fab brush because it just wants to dribble, which is probably annoying if you're trying to write beautiful calligraphy. So now I've got something on here, which is kind of just appeared by itself. So I've not told it what to be. And I want to, I've got the grey underneath of the charcoal. I've got the running lines. And it might be that I'm going to get something. Now, I love to get something that's really subversive, if you like, really kind of like anti-painting. So this was left to me, again, by someone who lives in South Korea. We had a little connection there, and they were moving back, and she left me this big pot of stuff. And this is like a luminous, I guess it's a highlighter pen crayon. I'm just gonna, I've been using it loads, and I'm going to be real sad when it runs out. And I should have looked for one when we were in South Korea. I'm sure I can probably buy it somewhere. But it's like, I don't know if you can see that. Let's bring that up close. It's a lovely bonkers. I'm just going to draw a line there. And I'm maybe beginning to, and I've got a felt tip pen. This is an artist pen, a big brush. I'm going to just accentuate that line. Now, it might be that if you've got colours that you want to use, and you just, you know, now you can see, can't you? There's something about this that's getting a bit landscapey, so I might just turn it upside down. Oh, left that bit behind. Let's turn it up that way. I don't know. Might need to re-stick together. Obviously, putting the weights on, I'll have to make sure I don't put them on a wet piece of paper. I could equally introduce another colour, and we're going to be nearly run out of time. So just over here, why wouldn't you? Got Daniel Smith's Opera Pink. This is the other thing. I might be playing, but I'm using really expensive materials. I'm using my best materials. My top tip is, you know, buy less paints, she says, having shown you all those hundreds of paints, but the ones that I've bought lately are all really top quality, expensive paints. So I'm going to do another blob of colour. I've done it on the same side as the other one. I'm just going to let it flick out. And then I want it to run, but I think that ridge might be there. We go run. Oh, to that one. That one's become disconnected. That's okay. I'll just drop it. That's two. And all of a sudden, let's just, having done something as kind of splish sploshy, your creative juices are flowing. Now, this might be a piece of messing about that goes in the bin. Probably will be. It might not be a piece of work that you're going to keep, but it's just allowed you to be playful. And let me just change cameras. Having done something like that, now obviously I've rushed through that to make it 20 minutes. My suggestion is that you let that last an hour. Take a great big breath, do it 2 or 3 times. It feels sort of naughty and slightly silly and kind of, why am I doing this? And all kinds of things will bubble up to the surface that will make you feel like you shouldn't be doing it. Oh, you know, this is just wasting time. This isn't serious art. It's what I call serious playing. And it's really important to seriously play. And these kind of tasks are like that. And there might be little bits that you love that end up stuck in your sketchbook, if you have one, or on your wall. I quite often put things on my wall. I've got a big piece. I wonder if I can turn this slightly. Can you see this here by the clock? Don't know if you can see that my speakers and my microphone's in the way. But that was a big piece that I did on a workshop with a friend who ran an intuitive painting class. And it was so playful. And I put it up there as a benchmark for being playful, being intuitive. Now, it's not necessarily final. It's definitely not a final piece of work, but it's let the creative juices flow. And now I'm ready to go into the studio and properly do whatever it is I'm working on. So that's a kind of warm-ups, I guess. Like if I was stretching to do a long walk, heaven forbid, or a run, heaven forbid. Long walk's coming because I am doing the 5 days of the Camino, but hey, so I'm having to do warm-up exercises and playful things that get you there. to the series.
I love that concept of the blank page. And when we did a similar kind of thing at Arrow Mill, didn't we? And you asked us all you gave us all a piece of paper. And I'm not an artist. I'm prepared to say that. But it really, that whole thing about not having any rules and just going for it and not thinking it's got to have an outcome is really liberating.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you then take that approach into your actual practice, and actually what happens is when you're then working seriously, you go, what happens if I let it run here? And it's fab. Though I went to an artist opening a couple of Fridays ago, Good Friday, and the work was beautiful. In fact, it was
Andrew
Fields, and he had a piece of work there that had a seascape in it, and he let it run, and it had sold straight away. First thing that sold, and yet it was the one that he was being really playful, and it was expensive.
No, I think it's
about the lesson that you learn from that.
Yeah, I think being playful is something that you mustn't lose in your art practice, and giving yourself time to do these warm-up activities. And this, honestly, you pushed every boundary I have.
I know.
Because I am now filthy, and I find that so difficult.
Yeah, and do it as a thing that you just do because I'm slightly stressed now. I need to rip up a piece of paper and undo something that's just been said to me. It's quite useful for that, you know.
It's a very mindful activity,
Yeah,
and I found it. I'm happy to show my outcome. It looks a bit like a boat.
Excellent.
So, I managed to grab some pastels. I had some pastels and a Pritt stick. That was as much, and some lined paper, as you can see. But it didn't really matter because it was just all about the process of just letting go and just forgetting about your present and just being in the moment. So it was great. And I know we're doing a workshop on the 21st of April at Valentine's with Fran, Edith, and Cherie Lubach, and that is the basis of that workshop we're doing there. Is very much about playing and experimenting. So anyone who's really interested in this kind of approach, then there's more to come there. And you do these online, don't you? So if anyone is interested in signing up with Debs, she does them online. And as you heard, we're thinking about doing maybe a retreat. We'll have a think about that. We'll have a chat about that.
Exploring Your Expressive Self. They're on my website, and it's on the 22nd of April.
Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick sharing of your website so people can. Yeah, look at that. Look at me. I can do that. There we are. So that's Deb's website. So if you're interested in this, you're watching this on record, or you're watching it now and you're thinking of doing this, then you can sign up to her mailing list and you'll get all the information. And then on the classes, I'm assuming if I click on this, there they are.
I think that's good. Yeah.
They're all up to date. So you've got the Exploring Your Expressive Self and your painting in Chipping Norton. So yes, that's the place to go. deborrahlast.co.uk if you want more information on all of that. Unshare that. Sorry, I pixelated you slightly there. So I think this last 20 minutes or so, it would be good if everyone takes and try and stick to your 5 minutes, please, if you can. Otherwise we will completely overrun, and you don't have to do it if you don't want to. But if you want to talk about a piece of work, then this would be a good time for us to explore that whole discussion around critique, because that's something else that you do as part of your teaching, isn't it, Debs?
Yeah, and you have to have feedback. And one of the things that we talk about in the class is, you know, obviously it's really nice to have a parent or a child who goes, oh, that's lovely, but it's really unhelpful.
Yeah.
You like that your family go, oh no, Pete's much better at going, oh, I think that's not quite right, or you know, he'll spot things, which is really cool. But critique should be helpful. That's the most important thing. And the boundaries around critiques that I place are that it must be helpful, kind, and constructive. And those are the kind of key elements of it. You must be kind. And that's not because I want you to be soppy about someone's work, but you need to think how your words will land with that person, and knowing that person a bit is helpful too, knowing that they might not take in, like Leslie, I can take fairly robust critique from, because I'm fairly able to take that, but I know that there are other people that you couldn't do that to.
Absolutely.
So it, or it might be that I'm not feeling very robust today and I can't take it. So it's also learning to say, I don't really want you to feed back on this. I'm just showing it to you, and can we feed back on it later? So also setting boundaries around when and how is really important, because I know that people have been massively hurt and offended by critique. And that often comes from perhaps someone feeling haven't got the right to give a critique to your work. Or so I think you pick your champions who critique your work, but in the setting of a group critique, those kind of, you perhaps, especially when we're working with the eyes course, we get to know each other quite well over the course, and people post onto the Facebook page, and good things are said, and it's helpful, but it's so inspiring for other people to see your work, isn't it?
Yeah.
As an artist.
I
So an
think
artist
that's
is important.
I think that's important to say, absolutely, around the environment of critiquing, is that words are powerful, language is powerful, and so you have to be mindful of the language that you're using, and also it's not your work, it's their work. So it's almost, you have to almost approach it in more of a coaching language
And
than
asking questions. Yeah, ask questions. Coaches don't tell you what to do often. They just go, tell me about this piece, or I wonder if you've done it differently, how would you have done it? Those kind of questions are really helpful, because when you're looking at your piece of work, you need to go, maybe. Or sometimes I will show a painting to another artist, go, this bit isn't working. Thoughts? Question mark?
Yes. And they're not there to they're not going to come back and tell you what to do, but they might reinforce and say, yes, in my opinion, that's not working, have another go. But they're not going to tell you how to fix it, because you're the artist and it's your work. So I think critique in its most powerful form is more of a coaching conversation than it is an instruction. And it is more
telling people what they already know. So
Yeah.
as soon as they go, I know that. As soon as someone says something to you about painting, you go, yeah, I knew that. I probably could have verbalized that. I just needed you to say it, because yes, I know that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. And you must approach it with, as you say, with absolute kindness, because we know the emotional attachment that artists have to their work, and that's absolutely fundamental to being a good artist, is that you are emotionally attached to your work. So again, it's having respect for that emotional attachment, because these are not just colours you've randomly applied on a piece of paper. There is there's a journey that's gone, could be 30 years leading up to this, and it's a lot that's been invested. So I think you're absolutely right in that, setting those boundaries. So I asked the question, does anyone have a piece of work that they would like to share with the group to discuss? You don't have to feel obligated. You can if you want to put your hand up. Carolyn. Lovely. If you could unmute yourself, Carolyn, that would be great. Thank you. That's very brave. And I'm very proud of you.
I don't mind being critiqued. I did my BA not that long ago, and I work with Emily Ball and Nick Bodymead, and they critique. So I'm quite used to critiquing. I don't mind it. But I have a piece on the wall behind me. I'm going to move the computer.
I picked my pen up, sorry, I dropped to the floor.
So it's almost there. So I'm going to, what am I going to do? Shall I just move the computer? Will that be easier?
That would be
easier. It needs to be much closer.
Yeah.
That's better.
Is the lighting all right?
Yeah, it could be better, but it's fine. I'm going to put.
I'm going to go on to.
If you put speaker view and speak, then it'll come up, Caroline.
Yeah. So you just need to.
You want me to do what?
You need to put yourself onto speaker view, so in the top
done it.
corner, yeah.
You're running the show, aren't you? So yeah.
And then what I'll do is I'll mute myself and Deb's, so you will be the primary on the screen. Okay, and so it's in your hands to then describe the piece and show us what you're
Okay, I'm going
what
to
we're
just
looking at.
move my. So can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to just move a light. Is that brighter? Can you see it?
It's not really brighter yet. That's, yeah, going closer is better. As close as you can go is better.
Okay, hold on.
That's better.
Okay, so this is a painting of it's actually my daughter, and so I have 3 things that I paint: landscape, my family, and people and pattern. And I work often together to see what would happen if I did this, and if I did that, and if I added this, what happens, and how do I look at it? And this painting has changed immeasurably. So I wasn't quite sure what to do with it. And then I was doing, I've got a huge painting over here that is my experimental canvas. And I was playing around. I like Floribunda and I like flowers. And I found this image of these datura. And I thought, well, what would happen if I just did that? And then suddenly the whole thing came to life, but they were a bit bold. So I've knocked them right back. And it's whether it's working at the moment, whether the colours are working, do the figures stand out enough? So it's that I think I'm looking for.
Okay, so Debs, do you want to have a conversation? You'll need to unmute yourself.
Sorry. Sorry. It's absolutely lovely to see what you're doing, and thank you so much, because I look at that and go, oh, yeah, that's sort of what I want to do, all those things together. It's hard, isn't it? Composition is lovely. I didn't see the figure immediately, and I'm not sure, is that the intention, that you don't see the figure, that they're kind of slightly ethereal in the piece?
Yes.
Which is nice. I wonder if the face maybe has too much of the background color in it. That would be my only kind of thought, is it? But then it would stop being ethereal. So there's an element of, you sort of have to, I love that you push pull between, you know, you put stuff on, take it off, put stuff on, and that's wonderful, isn't it? This sort of push pull of kind of putting on, taking off, which is really beautiful. I really like that. And I can see the Floribunda element there is just beautiful, and I always look at Emily Ball's Floribunda course and go, oh, I'd love to do that.
Have you not done one?
No, she's my daughter-in-law's aunt, Emily Ball. So she keeps, yeah, I keep looking at it. She's like, yeah, no. But what do other people see when they, yeah, any thoughts? What are you feeling isn't done yet?
I'm not sure at the moment. This figure was the one that came out first, and this started with very, very thin one colour. So that's why it is the same colour as the background. And I do this quite a bit. And it's because I quite like this sense of surprise, this sense of mingling with what's on. I don't necessarily like things to stand off or out. They have to be part of it. And this one was working really well. This one was a different colour, and I've had to change the colour. And it's really, yes, it's whether or not I then, am I right to leave the faces the same colour, or am I needing to, this one I think isn't quite working as well as this one, and I'm not quite sure why.
Can I, sorry, can I interject? When we were just doing the playing, because this is something that as you were talking came up to me. When we were just doing the playing, it was about moving the flat surface into a different dimension. And I wonder, I don't know if this is something that you do, Carolyn, but whether you photographed that and then put it into the computer and
That's what-
then disassembled it and reassembled it in the computer. Because for me, it's got this idea of layering. Does everyone else see that?
Yeah, it's exactly what I was going to suggest is photograph it. When
Great.
that's on paintings, do you use have you got an iPad or an iPhone? Because I use
Photoshop on my big computer.
yeah, if you can use Photoshop, hooray. I'm not that clever. But I have a drawing app which Hockney uses, which is that pages, paper, something like that. And I use that and I put paintings in, put them in a layer that I lock, and then I do different things on top on a new layer and just try it, because then you haven't spoilt the painting because you've done it on a computer. So when I get to that stage in a painting, I'll often do that because I know it needs one more thing. And for me, it might be, oh, shall I put an orange line in, or is that just over egging it? So then I do it on the computer, on the iPad or whatever, in a drawing app, and then I know yes or no. I'll know. So I love that, using that. It's such a brilliant tool because yeah, there's an element, isn't there? Sometimes when you put it in as well to photograph it, it ups the contrast and you realize that you need to. So, and sometimes you go, oh, contrast is too much. I need to bring the contrast down. So it's that, kind of, also photographing it, I think helps you to see stuff that you don't see when you're looking at it, weirdly.
Yes,
Yeah.
because you're very close to it right now, aren't you? You're very intimate with this painting. And by putting it up onto a screen, you can create some detachment and understand the story.
Vincent's got something.
Yeah, so Vincent, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I know. When I used to do live painting up at in London years ago, it's one of the things the tutor taught us then. If you're in a small space, you use your iPhone. You can look at it. It creates distance. So you're looking much more at the composition and not the detail, and whether it works or not. What I do like about this painting, it's got an ethereal feel about it. I don't think you want to lose that. So maybe that figure on the left, I don't mind, but maybe the one on the right's a little bit more ghostly, and maybe that's what you're feeling you want to create.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just know it's not quite resolved. So
yeah, and that can take ages, can't it?
I mean, it may well be that this one gets put. I started this back in November. So
yeah.
It's been through many changes. It may just have to go away while I think about it for a while.
That works. I did that once with a picture. I was struggling with a drawing and I left it for like 18 months and I had an open studio. I thought, well, let's have a look at this. And my whole outlook towards it changed. It was actually much better than I thought. Didn't need a lot. And it's the one I sold. So you can't tell.
Yeah.
No.
So,
yeah,
well, thank you all.
The one beside it also, let it talk.
Yeah.
So I love that you're working with a piece beside, and I think often it's the not having one piece on the go at a time, but having a second painting at the side can have a conversation with the one you're working on.
You mean
I think
the landscape?
Yeah, they're talking to each other really beautifully.
Well, that's
and you
why
just need to back up on the conversation.
in my studio, I have all the paintings that I'm working on or have finished. They're on my wall because they kind of influence what I'm doing now.
For sure. Let them talk to each other. They've got really good conversations. We just need to listen.
Well, look, they are all.
Yeah, look at
all
that.
Here.
Fab. Yeah, listening.
All there. So thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cool. So
hopefully that helped. Yeah, hopefully that helped. I think the other thing that's Vincent has in his studio that hopefully he might show us is an amazing easel that's double-sided that he can work on two pieces at once and turn them around. So a big piece and a small piece, haven't you, Vincent?
I have, actually right next to here. See if I can turn this around. It's it's on casters, so I can spin it around. I don't know if you can see it. So that's the painting on the easel, but it's quite a tall easel. I can't get far enough
I was
away.
going to say, you might need to move back a little bit. Yeah, it's difficult.
But, yeah, as you can see the top of it, I put a piece of wood across the top so I can put my mail stick on it. And then you can see down at the bottom there, you've just got that there. And then round the back, I've got another painting.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that cool?
So
Yes.
it's drying off. So it's been, I'm probably going to invest in another one, but it's been a real, because I haven't got a huge studio, I've got a converted garage and I'm running out of space to put my paintings. My whole house is full of pictures. So I was thinking it was a way of both storing work while once it's drying and then, you know, I'm working on another piece because I work in oils. This is a finished painting I did. It's called Snake in the Grass. So it's all from imagination, not a single photograph involved. So it's a mixture of imagination and memory. The banana and the apple were from life, but larger than life. And it's using my design background. So I'm an interior architect. So everything in there is all from my head. So I sketch it all out, but there'll be areas like the pictures on the wall with that was just something a bit developing as I'm painting. So it does evolve as I'm painting. So it's a little bit of Magritte is my influence.
Yes, definitely.
So you've got that sort of around. So it's a bit of fun. It's a bit of the play element I relate to a lot. Although it looks very controlled, but there's a lot of play in it because there are things that I add in as I'm going. And so it's very much storytelling, but it's people can make up their own story. So it's a bit quirky. And this one is the one I'm currently working on, not quite finished yet, but nearly there. And it's called Pigs Will Fly. So, you know, again, no photographs involved. It's an element of humour and random objects. And the traffic cones feature in my work a lot because it started off when in lockdown, I did a drawing where I put a traffic cone in to balance the picture. And I've become more conscious that everywhere I go, I see blessed traffic cones. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
So I've made them into light fittings. So I'm having a bit of fun. So yeah, and this was one I did last, which basically is called the motorhome. And it's me poking fun a bit at motorhomes because they're too big for our roads. I think they're a stupid idea because you know you could drive somewhere, you park it up, where are you going to go? You're stuck with it. So you know, and it's basically taking their house with them. And you've got the little humble caravan in the background. And it's a bit of nostalgia too. So it's a little bit of a nod towards the Ladybird book, which I actually adored as a kid. And I did do a lot of camping as a youngster. So yeah, so it's having a bit of fun.
That's
those are fab.
they're brilliant, aren't they, Debs?
but-
So I think we're coming to the end now. It's been absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much, Debs. You've been so generous in your sharing, and everybody has been fabulous in joining in and participating and taking part. It's been brilliant. Thank you so much. I hope you have a good rest of the day, not too frantic. And as I showed you earlier, Deb's website, I'll just do that again quickly now. If you want to contact Debs and find out more about her classes, you just go to her website here and everything, and you can book online. And if you have any questions for her or us, then yeah, just send us a DM in the Instagram or in the YouTube comments, and we will do our best to answer them. But thank you all so much for spending the time with us.